That Joe! It's my grandfather. I think so anyway. That's where we were at, right there. That area of Tennessee. And the second mall I went into, well, it was a mall. The woman said it was a movie theater. It was a movie theater that was just in the middle of the mall, or over at the side of the mall. It's not loud enough. So this morning, well, I've been having lots of good experiences, but the other ones I wrote down, I just don't have time to talk about them in this video. So I'm just going to do this one experience I had this morning, and then, oh goddamn, print it on both sides. Well, wait a minute, let me see. Okay. So, so this is good enough to talk about in one video or whatever. But, okay, so March 9th, which is today, this morning. Okay, so, it started out, I was in a mall again. Joe likes to put me in malls. And, so I went to this huge mall in Tennessee. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to, put that in here. But we actually flew. Yeah, we actually flew. But that wasn't part of the scenario. You know, like, the scenario started, I was right there walking around middle of the mall. Me and my family. My mom, dad, brother, sister. But we actually flew there. But that wasn't part of the scenario. Okay, so my family and I went to Tennessee for a trip. I am not sure why. We were at a mall walking around for hours and hours and hours. I cannot remember why we went on this trip. Or that part wasn't programmed, you know, for me. You know, Joel didn't program that part. We walked around and around for several hours. I mean, not around, but through the mall. I mean, we walked through the mall, up and down, like through the mall. In this big, huge mall. Wait, hold on. We walked up and down the mall for several hours in this mall. And it actually... it lasted a couple days. Like, this scenario lasted a couple days. So I was walking around the mall for at least a couple days. And many, many, many hours at a time. Again, I didn't wake up again. Oh, again, I didn't wake up again for the first time till 6:30 a.m. So I don't know when this scenario started. Because yesterday was the same thing. I mean, normally I get up and pee-pee or whatever. The past 2 nights, I didn't. Well, I guess because maybe I kind of went to bed a little later than normal, like almost 11, which I've been going to bed kind of earlier. But I went to bed at 11, and so then I just conk out, and I didn't even wake up until, 6:30. And then I'm like, I'm still thinking in my head, like, is it almost time to get up, or is it, kind of light outside yet? And sure enough, it was the last 2 days, and I knew, and then I looked at the clock, and it was like 6:20, 6:30. And so anyway, so I don't know when, even yesterday, I don't know when the scenario started, because I didn't even get up and go to the bathroom any through the night. So again, I didn't wake up again for the first time till 6:30 a.m. So I don't know when the scenario started. The scenario could have lasted for 3 hours for all I know. Normally I get up in the night and go wee wee at least once, but the last 2 nights I have not. My mom and dad and family were there with me, but I did not actually see them clearly, so to speak. They were just kind of like vague shadows around me, lingering around me, but they were there with me. Maybe not all the times I was walking through the mall, but a lot of times they were there. As I kept walking and walking, I started walking and walking and walking and walking, and like I said, this lasted for hours and hours and hours and hours and a couple days. As I kept walking and walking, I stopped this man over to my left side. He was walking across the mall. I stopped him because when I started walking around the mall, I was confused. Like, I didn't know where I was at. I didn't know what state I was in. I didn't know where I was at. And I asked him, where am I? I had no idea where I was at, and I was very confused while I was walking around and around this mall for hours. I don't mean around and around. I mean walking through the mall for hours and hours. Why I didn't ask my dad, I have no idea. The man told me this is Tennessee. I started walking around more and more and more for hours and hours with my family. I can't remember if they've taken me to Tennessee before, but they've taken me to Atlanta, Georgia many times under my scenarios, and most every other country and state. Now, Tennessee, I have employees and stuff, or coworkers that work there, so it could be why Joel picked that in my brain. The man told me this is Tennessee. I started walking around more and more and more for hours and hours with my family. Then this older woman I met up with in the middle of the mall, she was familiar to me. I know it was somebody, she was kind of heavyset. I know she looked about 68. I know she was somebody that Joel was copying off of, somebody I've seen at, I don't know, Barnes & Noble's or a movie or something like that. She was familiar to me. And she said, let's have Thanksgiving dinner. I sat there at a table in the middle of the mall with 2 friends. As far as I remember, it was not my brother and sister. It was 2 familiar friends. Different, friends. It wasn't my family members. I guess maybe that is why we went to Tennessee for a holiday trip. But like I said, I really don't know if that is accurate. Because, like I said, some of these experiences, they're not exactly A+ experiences. Lately, I've been getting a lot of B- experiences. This is like a B-. But, or maybe a B, but probably more like B-. I guess maybe that is why we went to Tennessee for a holiday trip. But like I said, I really don't know if that is accurate because, that was just kind of out of the blue. Like, let's have a Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. But anyway, so maybe Joel did really, want me to think that that's why we went. But, that's not, he didn't program it good enough or whatever, if that's what he wanted me to think. So I was hesitant to sit there since I knew I probably wouldn't eat anything anyway. But the other 3 people did get some food, and we all sat there for a while at the table in the middle of the mall. As far as I remember, I do remember them eating turkey, but nothing else. At one point, I did leave the mall and go back to my hometown, and then boom, I was back at that mall again in Tennessee. And in real life, I think I lived like 10 hours from Tennessee in real life. I do remember seeing the outside and grassy area, of the mall and stuff, near the parking lots and stuff, and everything. I do remember seeing the outside and grassy area and everything when I left the mall. Then boom, I was back at the mall in Tennessee again. I left the mall for at least 1 day. I left the mall for at least 1 day, and that 1 day, as far as I remember, I do remember being like standing there either in my mom's house or my house. I think it may have been my mom's house. And so that was like but I don't remember anything else. But that was like, the day that I left. Like, boom, I was back at my mom's house in this town. And like I say, I didn't write that in here, but as far as I remember, I do, but I don't, like I say, there could have been some other parts, when I was standing there back at my parents' house in this town. But I don't remember, but I do remember just, bam, at least feeling like I was back in my town and like I was standing there somewhere in my mom's house. It may have been the family room, as far as I remember. But anyway, So at one point, like I said, I did leave the mall, and then boom, after I saw the grass and everything, there was a few seconds, like I say, where I knew I was back at home. It felt like home, and I was at my mom's house standing there. And then boom, I was back at Tennessee at the mall. And I left the mall for at least one day. So here I go again, walking all around the mall, through the mall, blah, 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 blah. I mean, all through the mall, again in Tennessee. This mall was huge. I like it when Joe, actually names the malls and stuff like that, I like it when he puts a lot of details, that makes it more interesting. But he didn't tell me what the name of the mall is or anything. So for whatever reason, I must have wanted to know by different sources where I was, because I asked a woman where I was. There was another woman that started walking around near me, and she had lighter color hair, and she looked about 60s. She said I was in Dee-Walt, Wat-Ford area of Tennessee. She said it was just an area to the southwest corner of Tennessee. I said, you mean Washington, D.C. is near the states, but it isn't a state? She said, yes, that Dee-Walt, Wat-Ford area is not a state, but just sort of an area of that part of Tennessee, but it was not Tennessee. But basically, like I said, I was in Tennessee, but I was really in that isolated area I told you about. So I had all these thoughts in my head outlined where Dee-Walt was. Yeah, in my head I started thinking where Dee-Walt was, and I was wondering the population. I was thinking, even though it's a small area, could there still be at least a couple million people? I started thinking all that in my head. I think Joe put all this in there because of the show I was watching on Netflix. They kept flipping from city to city and country to country on the show I was watching. And LMAO. By the way, I wrote the Dee-Walt, Watford area when I woke up, so I would not forget those words. And a lot of times you wake up from a dream and shit, and you think you're wide awake, and you're not. That's why you clearly freaking forget. You totally have it on the brain, very clear words and shit like that. And then you start waking up and getting up out of bed, and then within a couple, seconds or minutes, boom, you forgot. So a lot of times you wake up from a dream and your eyes are still closed and everything, and you feel like you're 100% awake, and you have all those words on the brain, the exact, clear words that the alien gives you or whatever, names and stuff. And then, because you're not 100% awake. You think you are, but you're not. So that's why I hurried up and got up and wrote it down. And so I would not forget those words. Oh, and also, I know why Joe put that in there. I was watching something on YouTube about the Jersey Devil, and that big grassy forest was near New Jersey, but it's not a part of... I think it may be a part of New Jersey. It's either near New Jersey, or it's just kind of on the outer skirts of the state or whatever, or of that city or whatever. But it was on the outskirts of New Jersey, called Pine Barrens, I believe. And so that's also why Joel kind of put all this crap in the scenario. How Joel came up with Tennessee and Dee-Walt, Watford area, I'm not sure. I think because I actually did have the term Watford, Connecticut on the brain recently, and that Dee-Walt stuff is the name of tools. So he put all that together. I didn't really have Dee-Walt tools on the brain recently, but I did have that Watford, Connecticut, or whatever it's called, on the brain. I started walking around, up and down the mall, around again, and down the mall, and eventually I came to a food court, and it was so funny. It was over to my right. There was a menu, like when you look up there, like if you go to a Chinese restaurant, and there's all these pictures of the food. Well, I looked up there, and it was like a big picture of a collage of nuts, because I've had, nuts on the brain. I've been eating a lot of nuts, especially cashews. And so anyway, so I came to a food court, and I looked up at the pictures of the food, and in one of those small food, I don't know what you call them. What do you call those at the mall? Those little bitty. They may have a Taco Bell or whatever. They're probably called something. I just can't think of. I don't go to the food court very often anymore. I can't think of what they're called, but I'll just call them, you know, they're not really restaurants. They're vendors. But I'm sure they have you know, they're compartments of small, little, tiny restaurants, but I'm sure they have another name. I just don't know what they're called. But anyway, it was nothing but nuts and seeds that you could buy. That was funny. I saw all these pics of small nuts, different types of nuts, all crammed together on the display, on the menu, on the board, on the menu. Like all different types of nuts and seeds where you just, all different types of nuts and seeds that were just placed close together, almost like a collage, just like I put in the template. The nut I honed in on, I saw clearly, was the cashews. I honed in on the cashews very clearly. Now, what was to the left and to the right, the specific nuts, I can't remember, but I honed in on the cashews. And I saw the cashews very clearly. I have been obsessed with cashews lately and recently ordered 5 pounds, so that is why Joe put that in here. I did not actually go buy any nuts in the scenario. Yeah, in real life, I kind of stopped eating them for about a week because I ate some. And then I had colon blow, but it couldn't have been from the cashews. I think I breathed something in. It could have been some gluten or something like that. I think I breathed something in, and that's what did it. Because, you know, I'm eating stuff that has cashew flour in it and stuff, and I'm not reacting. So it couldn't have been from the cashews. But to be on the safe side, I just stopped eating them for about a week, but I'm going to start pigging out on them again. But anyway, I didn't go buy any nuts in the scenario. The last part, or, you know, at the food court. The last part of the scenario, I started walking up and down the mall, again, forever. Then I came to some doors over to the left. Over to the left, I went down a bit, you know, the mall, and over to the left side, there was a bunch of doors. I was afraid to open them because I thought they would lock behind me. There were at least 9 or 10 light brown doors lined up. Just bam, 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 bam. They were thinner doors. Oh, they were wood, by the way. They were like wood doors. I opened one and stepped and looked inside, and I saw what appeared to be another huge, gigantic mall. I noticed how bright it was in there from the domed skylights. I looked up and I saw the sun was shining through. See, the mall, the first mall, I don't remember it wasn't that, it was just normal. And then it's like when I went to that second mall, it was like brighter, you know? Like the first mall, it didn't seem like it had skylights. The ceiling looked just like, you know, in the template. There were compartments of skylights with rails or borders, you know, around the skylights. The rails and borders were white. A woman walked by me and I said, is this another mall? She said, no, this is the movie theater. Which it wasn't. It was just a movie theater way over to the left that was smack dab in the middle of the mall. I looked way down the mall over to my left, and there on the left was a huge IMAX looking movie screen. There was a young brown-headed guy that was walking up to it, and behind him about 12 other people, men and women. There were seats, rows of seats and stuff, and they all started to sit down in the front row for the movie to start. And I just went to a movie recently, by the way. Anyway, so Joel puts all this in here, you know. I saw them sit down in the front row, you know, and waiting for the movie to start. It seemed like it was around either this time, for whatever reason, you know, it seemed like it was when I went into that mall. It seemed like it was either 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. or possibly noon for whatever reason. Now, like, actually, when I was first placed in the first mall, walking around, it seemed like it could have been like 11 a.m. or 10 or 11 a.m. But, you know, in that reality or whatever. And Joe could have made me feel those, you know, thoughts or whatever, or those feelings, you know what I mean? He could have programmed that for me. Okay, so some of the stuff explained above is not necessarily in chronological order, because when scenarios are so long like that, you know, and you're just literally doing stuff for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, sometimes it's hard to remember the exact chronology. And I think I just made up that word, but I don't know if that's a real word. But LMAO. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was if I have experiences, well, most of my experiences are never worse than a B minus. But if I have experiences worse than a B minus, then I just don't talk about them. Dee-Walt, that's where we were at. The first guy, like I said, the first guy was just being lazy. That's why he told me Tennessee. The woman told me the truth and said we were in this little area right there by Tennessee, the Wat-Ford area. And there were some other words. That, and some other thoughts and stuff that when I was talking to the woman and when I was talking to the man. But I can't remember all of it, all of the words and stuff that were discussed or the sentences or whatever. But there were some more when I was talking to the woman and the man. But anyway, that was my fun experience to what do you call it? Isolated area or whatever. Tennessee, the Dee-Walt Wat-Ford area. Kind of funny. Oh, but here's the little nut menu. Now, in the scenario, there wasn't, a black border around it. I just put that in here, to try to make it look like a menu or whatever. But basically, the nuts were like collage style. And they were tiny, too. They were tiny pictures. They were like tiny little pictures. I had to like really hone in, with my x-ray vision. And then that's when I saw the cashews, close up, the cashews. Ain't that right, Tori? Simby's all neutered now, and he hasn't been spraying. He sprayed twice, just within, 5 or 6 days after he got neutered. But now he's been neutered for quite some time, and he hasn't sprayed since. Good job, Simba. So yeah, it definitely stops that. I mean, it doesn't change their personality. It just stops bad habits like that. But he's still probably going to have sex with the cats, I have no doubt, because he's a lot like Bobby.